very much indeed. So, panelists, the webinar is now live, so it's a family show, if we can remember that. But as briefed, bring your whole self to the big debate, and I'm really looking forward to getting this one underway. So we're off and running. Guests are arriving, so I'll do a brief introduction as people are arriving, and then we'll kick off with your individual introductions. So welcome everybody to another big debate. Usually it's not sunny outside my window today, and I'm not sure about you, but I'm kind of demanding that this beautiful sunshine continues, because it's definitely helping my health and well-being for sure. But I hope everybody is well. I really appreciate the time that people are giving to what has clearly touched a nerve with our members and the wider creative media and digital community of Manchester, judging by the numbers that we've got that we're expecting today on the call. We're up to probably about halfway in terms of arrivals, and they're coming thick and fast. So let's get underway. So this topic of debate was entitled "Are You Fit for Work?" And it's a little bit aggressive, I think, the title, "Are You Fit for Work?" And it's quite, everybody's got their own interpretations. And in talking to the panel, so many different questions and angles and thoughts have been shared already. We're hoping to share those with you today. Before we kick off in the debate, there are, as ever, a few thank yous to make. And I'll start off with, in fact, we've got Andrew from Bruntwood Works on the panel today, so we'll come to him in a short while. But the thank you starts with Bruntwood Works for sponsoring the event. Andrew will give us a little outline as to Bruntwood Works and kind of why it is so relevant for those guys to be supporting this, as they have done with many of our debates in the past. Also like to thank Clear Productions, who are on tech support today. So Caroline and the team in the background. Cindy and Jenny for helping get all the guests along, and obviously helping to get the panel together as well. And as always, most importantly, it's thanks to the guests. Whilst there will be a lot of discussion led by the panelists today, it's so important that we get to hear your reactions to the points that are made and the discussions that we have today. And you can do that by using the chat function at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. Feel free to make comment. We'll be making a note of those. And once we've been through the discussion and debate amongst the panelists, we'd really like to put your questions and your thoughts to the panel so that we have a nice collaborative event by the end of today. So what's it all about? What's this big debate all about? I think you'll have seen the notes from the invitation to the event. It's, there's been months of turbulence, and Greater Manchester business, like other parts of the country, has been gearing up for a physical return to work, a hybrid return to work, somewhere in between those two, or a totally new flexible way of working. And the question we asked ourselves was, are we ready for it? All great in theory, but when it actually comes to discussing it with your teams or thinking about it yourself, how are people feeling about it? Have the months of isolation fractured that fabric of working relationships? Are we emotionally prepared for a daily commute, or couple of daily commutes? Or is the idea of working in close physical proximity with our colleagues bringing you out in hives already? Conversely, just the simplicity and joy of office banter, the banality of it, and the sort of freeing up of discussion, is that something that we are all longing to get back to? Has the team brew seen its day? Is it kind of everyone for themselves? So it's not just the big questions, but it's the minutiae that I think we're all been debating. And have we been debating it just because we've got a debate around this subject, or does it really matter? That's all of these questions and more we're going to try and cover off today. And we're not here, and the panel hasn't been sort of brought together to create a blueprint of what's the perfect return. Now, that's not what it's about. You'll have your own ideas. We've got our own ideas. Your business is unique, and your individuals within your business are unique. So it's not about a blueprint, but it's hopefully by the end of this session, we'll all have our own views in sharper focus. And I'm sure we will pick up some ideas as well, not just from the panel, but from you, the guests, in terms of things we can be thinking about as we move into this next phase. So it's a hot topic. Can't wait to get into it. So let's meet the panel. This is the part where I ask each of the panelists to give us a 60-second or close to 60-second summary of the sort of key challenges and issues that they believe we should be considering at this time. So I'm going to start off with Dan Sodergren, and loads of you will know him from his media appearances, and also he sits on the panel of the MPA. He's co-founder of Your Flock, and so a very relevant topic, as you will discover. So Dan, could you just give us an introduction and into your views on the subject?
Yeah, no, happy to. Hopefully everyone can hear me. And of course, being remote work, I have to say, I hope I'm not on mute, and hopefully everyone can hear me. Tap of the headphones, etc., as we all now know. That's what you have to do. Yeah, so I think what we're talking about here is really important. We know it's really important, but the thing I'm going to kind of maybe come back to a bit is the fact that this has not been a normal time. We know that, yeah, but sometimes we kind of forget this in the rush. And we forget that actually this was a global pandemic, is a global pandemic, an airborne virus that is killing people, and that produces a very stressful time and place. And I think when we go into this next bit, and I'm not going to say about roaring 20s, etc., but when we come into this next bit, there will be a kind of a revolution of thought around all these processes. I think we're not going to have most of the answers, because right now we are not working in normal environments at all. It's a very stressful. The external stuff is we can't forget that. Anyway, I work with Your Flock, which is a remote team culture and an analytics tool, and it works around team management. I also, as Christian Wright says, does some stuff on the BBC, but also work with the MPA on diversity inclusion. And I think that the future of work, potentially post-COVID, will allow us to become much more diverse and much more inclusive. And I'm going to go for the positive side of it only. And I know there's massive problems with mental health, and I'm not belittling any of these things. What I'm saying is the next bit of the future is a positive moment, a hugely positive moment for many people. Now, it might not be for everyone on the call, because you might be one of those people that wants to get back into the office. But do remember that so many other people have found this. I mean, they just did some reports on it. About 50% of people have found this experience to be positive. Now, remember, 50% finding it positive during a global pandemic with viruses that kill people, that's bloody high, isn't it? That's bloody high. I promise not to swear, so there you go. I don't think it's bloody swearing. So let's take the positives from this. I know there can't be huge numbers of them. We've got to remember that it's been done because of an awful reason, but the future of work is extremely exciting. I think productive and positive.
Well, very positive intro there from Dan. That's lovely to hear. And honestly, don't worry about the occasional swearing. I'm sure there's more to come. I'm moving in on and introducing Andrew Cooke, who is strategic director of Bruntwood Works. So again, Andrew, in approximately 60 seconds, can you tell us about Bruntwood Works and how you guys are seeing the key challenges in the days and weeks ahead?
Yeah, I mean, wow, what an exciting time. I think for me, it's been a bit of a crazy 12 months. We're the Bruntwood Works, the workspace, retail and leisure arm of the Bruntwood Group. So we're looking about how workspace is changing, how it's evolving, how the physical environment can actually meet the demands of the customers that are returning to the space. And I think for me, it'd be very easy. Well, certainly there were points during the last 12 months, there were periods of worry and concern and, what is the future of the office? But Do you know what? I'm a bit like Dan. I'm optimistic. I'm positive. I think we've got a massive opportunity. Certainly, someone like Bruntwood as a property owner and developer to actually create some spaces that are going to supercharge work-life balance for people, to take, I guess, all the good bits of work before and actually just make it better and kind of maybe break up and challenge the norm. So for me, depends which day you get me, but I'm feeling very positive today, and I can't wait to have a chat with you all.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Andrew. On to Liane Grimshaw, who, again, some of you may have seen in big debates of the past, or maybe tapped into the Manchester Meditates sessions that Liane set up recently. She's founder of SupaReal. Liane, can you give us your views? How are you seeing what we should be all thinking about at the moment? Kind of the key issues.
Thanks, Christian. I think, from my perspective, it's important for us to maybe appreciate what we've been through is some form of collective trauma, and that's kind of ongoing, really. And within that, I think you mentioned this at the beginning, Christian, that every single one of us is a unique individual. So our experience of the pandemic so far and going forwards as things return to normal is unique to us. And I just feel that we need to honor that in everybody else and within ourselves. We have to acknowledge that everybody's different. Some people relished lockdown, some people didn't relish lockdown, some people will relish coming back into the office, some people won't. And so as individuals and individuals within companies, I think that's a really, really important thing that we need to acknowledge. At the end of the day, we are all human beings. We're not machines. We can't just flick the switch and everything's going to go back to normal. So that's kind of the core of it for me. Fantastic.
Thank you, Leanne. So completing the lineup of our panel today is Seb Randall. Seb is development coach at Social Chain, and I'm sure at some point within today's session I'm going to make the first reference to it. Fan power, the fan power that we've seen over the last few days in the furore around the European Super League. I do think there's a tenuous, and I love to chuck in a tenuous link to business owners creating a new way of working versus actually listening to the people themselves who have to work there. That's got to be hugely important. I'm not sure whether that's part of your thinking, Seb, already, but let's hear your sort of 60-second summary, your particular view.
Yeah, I think, I really want to kind of reference what Leanne said about the uniqueness of each person. And I think this is so crucial, particularly, as a development coach at a very young company at Social Chain, to have undergone this situation that we've all found ourselves in as a group of young people is very, very challenging. And as a company, we've been very, very committed to supporting people with their mental health, having a company therapist, etc. But my role in particular is about getting people to think about the future and what they can put in place to support them with their personal development and what they actually want. And one thing that I speak to people about is that, yes, a lot of our freedoms have been taken away from us at the moment, but in actual fact, we've been given other freedoms, and some people don't know how to use those to their best advantage. So I think the challenge is really sort of empowering people to understand themselves, what they want, how they function at their best, and how to put a plan in place to help them deliver that. Oh, I love that.
What a great introduction. So, well, thank you very much, Seb. Thanks to all our panelists for the brief intros there. So we've all met the panelists. Let's hit them with some initial questions. So I'm going to feed in some questions now to get the debate going. Please, guests, if you can help me out, it's always far more interesting. You've always got better questions than I put to them. So use the chat function at the bottom of the screen. I'll pick up on those questions and make sure that we get to those in about 20 minutes time. But I'm gonna kick off. I think, Leanne, I'm going to come to you first with a question, and Andrew, if you can collect your thoughts as well to contribute maybe you'll come at it from a diametrically opposed view. Maybe we'll get a heated agreement going. But either way, what I'm going to kick off with is Leanne. So what are going to be the most common challenges people are going to face when returning to an office environment?
I think there's a whole raft of things I can maybe predict. As we've said, you know, there's going to be different challenges. I don't think it's one size fits all, because we are unique. We all have different triggers. We've all been conditioned differently. Our personalities are different, and we're all a bit out of practice maybe with interacting so much with the outside world on a day-to-day basis. So I can imagine that people are going to feel exhausted more than they were before. Maybe we get a bit overwhelmed, start to feel a bit wobbly. Even decisions about getting up and thinking, you know, I've got to put my makeup on, what am I going to wear today? How long's the commute going to be? Is it shorter or longer than it was before? So all of these things are going to play heavy on our minds just getting back into the office. The stress may go up, and we may get more issues around mental health because of that as we come out of this. Now, I think we have to remember it was already a problem before. The pace of change was already so rapid, and we were starting to see issues in the workplace because of it. So it's not like this is going to be a new thing. It might just ramp it up a little bit. And if people start suppressing how they're feeling, potentially there's health issues later, potentially sick days will go up. And that's not woo-woo, that's, you know, biochemistry in our nervous system. If it gets overloaded, will ultimately cause some health issues down the line. I also think that performance anxiety might start to raise its head again as we are interacting with our work colleagues on a day-to-day basis, and people can see you and what you're doing. Maybe that drive and feeling of needing to perform our A game is going to go up. And as human beings, we can't bring our A game every single day. We need periods of rest and recovery. So I think that's a really important thing for businesses as well, is making sure we encourage people to take rest. And in our industry, you know, we get really intense projects, you get pitch presentations to do. They're exhausting. So making sure we've got some rest around that is important. I also think we might get more distracted than we were before. So we actually might see productivity go up and down a little bit. Some people might thrive in a group environment. Some people might say, oh God, take me back to my home office or the dining room table, because I can actually get more done. And I think ultimately we need more compassion and empathy for people, not judging one another, looking out for one another, because businesses are ultimately a community of human beings.
There's so many fantastic points in there, Leanne. I think some of the discussions that we had in the lead up to the debate today around the people not recognizing their own stress levels, people not realizing that the impact that the last 12 months has had on them. They've kind of, you know, many people have been getting on with it bravely, but it's taken its toll, and you know, heightened sensitivities, all these things that you mentioned there. I'm not sure whether, Andrew, you're going to come at it from this perspective, but certainly I think it will be interesting to understand from a Bruntwood Works point of view, both the physical environment and also the kind of, as Leanne has said, that sort of cultural, mental health supporting environment. Those must be big issues for the team at Bruntwood Works to have got their heads around the last few months.
Yeah, I mean, it is a big issue, and I guess I completely agree with everything that Leanne says. And if I come at it from a slightly different angle, I'm thinking about, for those people who are ready and wanting to encourage their employees to come back into the office space, what are going to be those hurdles that might stop them being able to do it? And I think, you know, Leanne hit the nail on the head. It's not one size fits all. Different personal experiences over the last 12 months will be factored in. There'll be those people who have continued to use office space even periodically throughout the last 12 months. There'll be people who are on furlough, who really haven't been in a work environment perhaps as frequently as they had been before. So personal circumstances are going to be completely controlling over some of the challenges. One thing I would say is we've done a huge amount of engagement with our colleagues. You know, we've got close to 700 colleagues across our group business. We've got 2,500 different businesses who are in our buildings every single day. And in a usual day, that might be up to sort of 55,000 people using our buildings. And the one key thing that we've found has been so helpful is just speaking to them. Engagement throughout the whole last 12 months is understanding, because as I say, not one size fits all. Looking at the physical environment, I mean, the big one that stands out for me is just health and safety. I think we've got a big hangover that is going to continue for some time from this. People are going to feel, to a lesser or greater extent, a period of health anxiety about the spaces that they're in. And so as Bruntwood, we've got that kind of job to make sure that they feel safe and welcomed, and that's, you know, physical interventions like, you know, keeping the spaces clean and one-way systems and hand sanitize, and then all those other things as well that go around it, just about making a welcoming environment. The softer side, bringing people back in, bringing them back into a community, engagement through some of our digital platforms to almost create that community that people want to return to. The other thing as well, and I guess it probably links in, is we're not just talking around health and safety in the envelope of the office that we provide. There's the health and safety in the travel to and from work. So we can't control, obviously, how busy the trains are and the trams, and obviously the health anxieties that might come with that. But what we can support is more active travel. So we can try and help people to come into the office and run and cycle and have the showers and lockers and those things that actually provide viable alternatives to being on a packed public transport again. The big one, and I think we'll come on to it later on, is around health and well-being. I think in a lot of ways, lockdown has been negative on people's mental health. You know, we've spoken to colleagues and customers. There have been gyms closed, and, you know, up until recently, you know, you can't go out and socialize. So, you know, we've got social isolation. We've got words like loneliness being used. And I think good workspace can actually break some of that back down again. So I think if we can create spaces that support mental and physical health, so putting in yoga rooms, putting in gym studios, putting in sleep pods, as we're actually looking at in one of our buildings in Manchester city centre, these are all things that can help support mental and physical well-being. And I think a really well-designed workspace can really supercharge that.
Can I just make one point on that? I think all of that's amazing, but I think we've got a challenge here in that we want people to feel safe and secure, and yet unfortunately we've got to slap signs up everywhere reminding people that they might not be, and that's a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah, it is. It's something that we grapple with as well. The same goes for things like face coverings. So, you know, face coverings into buildings. We've always been a business that wants to be open and greet our guests on arrival, and you know, there is a physical barrier going up in front of people's faces to welcome people back. That is a hurdle that we are grappling with.
Let's move that onto Seb for a second, because the sort of commentary and points that you make about individuality certainly pose questions for team culture. The empathy that leadership needs to show to individual circumstances is one thing, but at the same time, you're trying to build a culture within an organization, and that means that you have to have commonalities and find those common grounds. So has team culture suffered over the last 12 months? And if it has, how and what can we do about that? Seb, have you got some thoughts on that? And then I'll bring you in on that, Dan, as well, please.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, yes, unfortunately, culture has suffered. You know, ultimately, the office is kind of where culture has happened, hasn't it? It's down to our environment, the conversations that we have, the brainstorms, etc. You know, most of us are working in the communications industry, and it's about collaboration and ideation and people, and that's where the fabric of culture kind of comes from. But now we're at this very tricky juncture where freedom actually feels quite good, and separation from people in some ways feels quite good again. So it's about you know, we've got that headspace to think now. It's almost energizing to have your own space. I'm someone who very much values people and connection, but having that space to actually think and do my work has been amazing for me. I think we have to recognize that we've been making a lot of sacrifices, particularly with disconnection to people, and that is very kind of dangerous, really. I think togetherness is what breeds creativity and ideas, and they come from shared experiences and having a common goal. So what we can do is really listen to the needs of the business, listen to the needs of the people, ensure that both of these things are being met. At Social Chain, we actually have a culture committee. So this is representative of the business, people from across the business who are currently walking around with clipboards, looking at the space, trying to reassess how we want to use it as a company. So it's about creating that 360 dialogue. You know, don't dictate to your teams, empower them to be part of that discussion. Think about what your company stands for and make your spaces conducive to those things.
So this, I mean, it's this. I'm scribbling furiously because there's so many points to pick up on. From your perspective, Dan, do you see and recognise the points that Seb's making here, not just in Flock, but Flock's obviously in loads of different businesses around Manchester and beyond. Are these points that you recognise as well?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing the same there, because, you know, I was scribbling down as Seb's wisdom was flowing out. So you just caught me a little bit on the hop there. But yeah, I mean, one of the key things for us at Flock, and I think for everyone now, is there's a recognition that in a lot of companies that they haven't really looked at company culture perhaps enough. They'd realised that, you know, having a cool office space was where you got this culture. I think exactly what Seb was just saying. But when that cool office space goes, does the culture go? And actually, it doesn't. It doesn't actually go. It may dissipate a bit, but it doesn't actually go. One of the weird things that we're finding is that, well, I'll go back a stage before. People tend to leave a company because they don't like the company culture. Yeah, not that the company doesn't have a culture, because, by the way, your company always has a culture. If your company culture is disassociation and not connecting, it's still a company culture. Yeah, it's about 34% of people leave a company because of the misalignment in company culture. But most leaders don't actually investigate this company culture enough. They don't actually ask those questions. As Seb was saying, you know, this is why Social Chain is probably doing so well and also keeps their people so much, is because they have that two-way dialogue. And at the moment, what we're finding is more and more people are using your Flock because it actually allows you to start looking at the values underneath the culture. You know, you're asking your employees what's really important to them from a values point of view, and what do you share. And, you know, I completely, iterate, you know, what Leanne was saying. You know, the people are the people that make up your company, aren't they? You know, the company is made up of people. And if you lose those people, then you lose your company. You don't just lose your culture, you lose everything. You know, the company comes together and the people come together to form companies because they like each other and they work for each other, not just to make money. And especially in our industries, if people start falling out and start leaving, and you look at the stats and the data now, I think in America, it's something like 51% of people are looking to leave the company they're in at the moment. 51%. Now, it was about 19% a couple of years ago. So there's a huge problem potentially coming our way as people want to leave. And the people who won't leave, of course, are people that still love your company and you're connected to. And I think, you know, as Leanne and Seb have rightly said, that's what we've got to be doing. It can't just be on our wish for them to get back into the office. It's actually got to be our wish to connect with them and start liking each other more.
Yeah, and that I think, again, I think I referenced it before. Maybe Andrew, I don't know whether this has come up in your explorations over the last few months, but this need for the leaders, whether you're a manager, team manager, or you're a business owner, to recognize that the sensitivity levels have changed. People's resilience levels certainly have changed. Some for the better, but many for the worst. And to be operating successfully as a manager today, we're going to have to adapt our behaviour, aren't we, as business leaders, to cut a bit of slack more to certain individuals, but for others to I think maybe there'll be people looking for a stronger leadership, a clearer path. And that's a hard balance. Again, I know it's not just the physical environment that you guys create, it's so much more. Our role's going to have to change, and people's roles going to have to change in your business, or adapt to make sure that we are addressing that challenge.
Yeah, I think it comes back to what we were all saying before. It's about engagement and the two-way communication. And I think as leaders now, we all need to be much more empathetic and understanding of the challenges that people face outside of work. And, you know, you talk about culture, and I'm going to turn it on its head slightly and say, well, actually, I think in some ways, if you had a strong culture before, you're actually going to come back to the office, perhaps with an even stronger culture, because do you know what? You actually maybe know your colleagues slightly better than you did do before. You've seen them outside of work. You've seen them into their lives. You've seen their pets on screen, on Zoom calls. You've seen their bedrooms. You've seen their dining room tables. You've heard the kids screaming and all the challenges that we face outside of work. I'm going to speak for myself. I'm going to be really candid and say there are people around our business that I've learned much more about by the fact we've been forced into this position now. So yeah, I think in answer, I think everyone is going to be changing, but I think there are huge positives that if we can keep some of those aspects, some of those connections that maybe go a little bit deeper than the day-to-day work-life balance that we had before, I actually think we're actually going to be in a stronger position than we were before.
Well, definitely something. Honestly, I'm realizing now we are in this is getting bigger and bigger and bigger as a topic. You know, we've got 1 hour, so I'm going to have to move, even though I kind of want to ask more on that one. I'm going to move it on a little bit. And Leanne, if I can come back to you. So if a business is looking to set up a health and well-being program, given what we've just been talking about, what are the key initiatives in the sort of proverbial playbook that they should be considering? Because I think at the end of today's debate, if anyone is a manager or an owner and you're listening and you're not thinking of having this, you're probably best switching off now and leaving, because you're going to hear this time and time again. It's not an option. You've got to have a view on it. So what kind of things can you share with us that should really be sort of front and center in that playbook?
I don't know whether I've got a unique view on this compared to most. I don't know. But, for me, well-being comes from in here. And a lot of well-being programs focus on the external environment. Now, don't get me wrong, that's really important. A good working environment with fresh air, and it's warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and there's good access to healthy food, and maybe you've got a yoga teacher coming in. All those things are great, but they are all external, and well-being comes from within. So I think there's a couple of fundamental things we have to remember. Well-being is about feeling good, and how we feel is determined by our thoughts in the main. And our thoughts come out of who we think we are and what we think is going on in the world. So it's a different approach to well-being, that I think that if employers can help people understand themselves better, process their thoughts and feelings in a healthy way, then well-being will ensue from that. So forward-thinking organisations like Social Chain, having a coach in residence, in effect, I think is a very, very healthy thing. And I would like to see more of that happening in companies. And I do think, as everybody's just been discussing, it's actually culture is the key tool in the playbook. How you treat people and how you expect to be treated. And I believe that love is the killer app in business. Love is what leaders need more of. Not only love for them, their teams, but love for themselves, and being able to cherish our humanity in every way that we can. But it isn't one size fits all. And as we've said, everybody's unique. So allow people to understand what they need within themselves, and then just support them and guide them on that journey to make their life better at work. And that includes the leaders too. You've got to live by example. You've got to demonstrate self-care, taking rest, being vulnerable, being comfortable expressing your feelings, and making people safe to do exactly the same. Not telling people what to do, no forcing them to do particular things.
There's a balance, isn't there? Inevitably, we always come back to that word. Finding the right balance. You mentioned leadership there, and I think the last few months probably no different to the years before for many, where there's a pressure to be honest up front and clear with people how you feel as a leader, and show your humanity. That I'm having a shit day, and this is me, but at the end of the day, there's a responsibility for leadership and guidance. I think maybe has broadened the need for that humanity. I see that as nothing but a positive in the workplace. From again, Andrew, your side of things, you've got so many different kinds of businesses in the as customers, and I'm not asking you to name and shame here, but are you seeing a general improvement in the average of behavior of leaders, or are you seeing a more polarized, some are just getting better and better and better, and others just archaic, don't seem to be getting it at all? Are we seeing, give us some optimism or give us the reality? What's the situation?
I think overall it is optimistic. We count Social Chain as a customer, so that's hopefully a good indication. But yeah, do you know what? All businesses are different though, and all leaders are different. But I think in general, more customers we are speaking to are realizing the power of colleague voice, and that comes from every aspect of the business. So yeah, I think for me, it's definitely a case of businesses are changing and their leaders are changing as well. But what we've also got to remember is we're in the middle of a bit of a pendulum swing here, and these changes will continue to happen. So more than just being sort of empathetic and showing love, it's also being ready to continue to evolve and change and pivot. And I think that's going to be the real tale of successful businesses in the next sort of few months and years.
Superb. So definitely,
I'm going to chime in really quickly and just add to those points are all as well about slowing down. And I think, we work in such a fast-paced industry that this moment has allowed us all to just stop and take stock of the situation and look at everything in totality and think, shit, what needs to change? What needs to be different? Which is a fantastic thing. And slowing down that pace enables you to kind of see these things that are so crucial. And it's such an opportunity for people. It's not challenging, it's an opportunity to really listen to individuals and what they need.
We'll take, Seb, let's take that point on into a slightly different area in terms of the loads of conversation. I don't know anyone who doesn't like the idea of flexi working. Okay, I haven't met one yet, and maybe just the circles I revolve in. But let's try and get guests, everybody on the call today, get your thoughts in here as well. But it doesn't look like 9 to 5. I'm not going to sing it. Is the way to make a living in the future. What are the most likely flexi hybrid approaches do you think that we're going to see? Maybe some radical thoughts in there as well. Dan, if you've got some thoughts to add after this, that'll be great as well.
Sorry, is that one to me?
Yes, sorry, Seb. Yeah.
I think it's clear, like we've said already, that one size doesn't fit all here at all, does it? So it very much depends on the industry. And for example, if you're a call center, for example, and you're supposedly switched on for the whole of your shift, how can the same flexibility apply to someone in that situation than, say, myself who works at Social Chain? So you've got to think about how to offer flexibility in those different scenarios. Maybe it's creating the 4-day working week or some kind of formal flexi working request, something like that. But I think in terms of the last 12 months, what we've seen is that flexibility is really key. It works. People want to be able to choose the hours that fit their lifestyle. They want to spend more time with their family. you know, do we need to make changes to our core business hours? You know, maybe you have a schedule that runs from 6 in the morning until 8 at night, and the staff get to choose when they operate within those hours. And also think about your people and the differences within your people, the staff that you have. This is probably what Dan's going to speak about. You know, we've got, say, Simon, who's in his mid-30s, who lives in Cheshire with his 2 kids. And then you've got Emma, who lives in town, who's maybe 10 years younger, and she lives with her friends, and she's got different requirements of her life, but they're doing the same job. So the same rules don't apply to the 2 people, because they're different people with different needs. So you have to take people's goals and their ambitions and their preferences into account and support them with that. In terms of the radical question, I think everything's pretty radical already in the way that we're working. But there's the option potentially to work from anywhere. You know, we've got a couple of employees who live in Spain, and they've now been told that if they want to go home for a couple of months at a time, they can do, and they can do their jobs from there. And, you know, I can remember a day when that wouldn't have even been a consideration.
Yeah, they don't sound as radical as they once did, these initiatives, do they? They just sound like brilliant things for an employer to be able to bring to the table. Dan, what about from your side of things? Anything that can surprise us, or have we just done radical and therefore everything just feels like, yeah, natural?
Well, we've got to remember that, you know, as a futurist, I've talked about digital transformation for a bit, but in the last year, there's been about 5 years worth of digital transformation that's happened around the world. In some industries, it's even 10 years. So yeah, it's been radical. There'll be other things that might happen, like there might be the growth of cooperatives in our industry and our sectors, and there's loads of different things that might happen. And we're in this remote work revolution, but we cannot underestimate this. You know, 4% of people work remotely and that kind of stuff about a couple of years ago, and it could be up to like 40% by the end of this, you know, so it's a 10 times bigger thing. It's huge. You know, we can't there's a massive cultural change. So you're going to need to know the values of your employees, and, you know, you'll need to start thinking, are they autonomous? Do they like autonomy? Who doesn't? You've got to start asking those questions. And that's a massive change. I'd like to just, if that's okay, bring up some work. Bruce, does everyone know Bruce Daisley? I always never remember if I say his second name right. Sorry, Bruce. But he did ex-guy from Twitter, or boss of Twitter, and he does some brilliant work. And they've just done some research that absolutely shows, definite link between these 2 things. Yeah, the lack of diversity in a company means that they want to go back to the office more. So the lack of diversity in the people, being race, gender, age, everything else, means they want to go back to a return to the office, back to the office. So this is quite a strong political point. It means that if you don't have diversity, that you don't tend to like flexibility. Now, this is a huge point. This is huge, yeah, because actually remote work allows us to become more diverse and inclusive, but it works both ways. So if you have quite an old-fashioned office and an old-fashioned kind of board of directors that are all very similar people, all thinking the same thing, they're all going to say, come back to the office. But the problem you're going to have in the future, I think, is that you won't get talent. You're going to lose people. Those people are your high talent individuals will want to have flexibility, just as Seb's saying. And I don't think this is just in creativity and in digital. Obviously, there are things like you can't remotely fly a plane. Got it. But that's an outliner. Yeah. You can't remotely do it in a factory, but robots are coming. Yeah. What we're talking about as the MPA is our sector. And our sector are information-based, happy people working together as a team. That does not, by the way, get rid of office spaces. No, far from it. I think it means you better have a fun office space, and you better have a place where, I wouldn't even call it an office space. You have a place where people come back and meet together. Heck, it's going to be like pubs on a Friday afternoon back in the day, yeah? But it might be without the drinking. I'm not saying it should be a massive drinking culture, but do you see where I'm getting with this? These people come back into town, and they will for the compelling reason that they like each other and they share their values, and you're adding value with the office experience. I actually think the amount of office space might go up, because you might need to provide a lot more than just a desk. You'll have to give them a compelling thing, not like a theme park and things, but we've got a brilliant point that Bruce says, hotelification of the office space. And I think that's where we're going to go. This becomes a challenge, of course, for people like Bruntwood, who are well up for this challenge, I know, because of the way they're changing things. But it does make a bit of a change, because you won't have an office space all the time. So it becomes more like a hotel. I think it's going to be fun.
Brilliant. I knew I could rely on you to get that. They're not radical, but very, very powerful points that you make there, Dan. That you reference the kind of talent, the next generation. I think, you know, let's spare a thought now for those new starters. Leanne, if I could come to you on this, those new starters who are about to meet their colleagues for the first time. You know, is this going to be a case of, you know, when pen friends first meet and they realize they actually have nothing in common and relationships are going to be under so much pressure? Or is it just going to be a euphoric moment for many? What are the challenges? Joking aside, what do you think, you know, the implications are going to be for these many people in our industry who are going to be meeting up with colleagues for the first time?
Oh, I mean, it could be a combination of anxiety or excitement, couldn't it, really? You know, and people become very self-conscious when they've only met somebody from behind a screen, and now you can see the full me and everything that I'm bringing to it. So that potentially creates anxiety. But I think it's just about, again, back to accepting everybody's different. It's not just about age or experience, and facilitating that within those businesses, within those offices. So helping those employees that are new to the business make connections and facilitating that in some way, which in whatever way feels natural to your particular business, rather just, you know, turn up on day one, there's your desk, get on with it. I think we need to work a little bit harder than that to build those relationships in the real world. I think because we've been living through Zoom or Teams or whatever quite a lot, and those calls tend to be scheduled. You know, shall we have a Zoom? We book it in, we put it in the calendar, we do all of that. Whereas in the office, there's more opportunity for serendipity and ad hoc conversations and things like that, which is a good thing because things can come out of that. But it's just about meeting people where they're at, listening to them, being present with them, and just trying to facilitate that ease in.
Superb. Dan, quick comment on that one, and then I'd like to move on to guest questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, sorry, I was just again writing down because I was just listening to your wisdom there. One of the things that we found, and I'm sure this is the same for everyone, that the young people are needing more and more support. I say that as being a 45-year-old man, so my apologies. Young might be different to a lot of other folks, but about 20% of people find remote work lonely. Yeah, but this actually doubles when it's the under 25s. Yeah, so if your average age is very, very young, this is going to be a big thing. Now, I'm going to keep coming back to using technology. Yeah, you know, onboarding during a pandemic should be a beautiful experience if you use the right technology. So should going back to work if you use the right technology. And I'm not saying because people aren't important. No, it's the other thing. If you don't know your people well enough and deeply enough with a CRM kind of function to it, because a human being shouldn't be able to remember 100 people's personality types and value systems. Yeah, but when you're talking to someone, you should, as a manager, go, of course, that's that young person who needs a bit more support because they talked to me twice yesterday and because I know they're caring, this is how we should react. Now, you might all think this is crazy future stuff. It's actually what your flock does, but it's actually because it helps human beings. It's not the computers taking over. It's going to be impossible to be a caring manager with 100 or so people because it's too much information. If you really want to look at it deeply, there might be too much, but you might just need a reminder, not just on their names, because you should be able to remember names, but all that other information, the deeper information, perhaps that's where we need to go. Just an idea anyway. Let
me take that point and link it to a question that has come in from Andy about how it's sort of commented on a number of the messages that have been shared today. And is asking, and Seb, maybe if you can have a think about this, or anyone actually, but Seb, maybe start with you. How the business leaders can find a balance. How do we get our heads around the fact that we've got to now, as Dan said, and Leanne has said, we've got to talk to everybody individually. At the same time, we've got a commercial business to run. I'm now starting to think my whole day is going to be having to work out everybody's individual daily moods and fluctuations rather than helping them to do the job that actually the client's waiting for. Now, how does, in a small business, you know, we're not all sort of 100 strong, got our life coaches built in. How is that balance? So maybe what are the most important things that we could be doing without systemizing it, keeping it authentic, all that kind of stuff?
I think as leaders, showing vulnerability, which is something that Leanne mentioned, showing genuine heart and care for your people. You know, I started in lockdown. I started this job in September. I've met probably about 15 or 16 people out of a team. Well, yeah, in reality, I've met them about 15 or 16 people out of 120. And what has come through to me, I know we're talking about a bigger business, sorry, Christian, but what has come through to me is the absolute heart and soul of this business. They genuinely care about the people who work here. That comes through so easily, and that's because the senior people within the company show vulnerability. They talk about these important issues around what it is to be human and how we live our lives. And, you know, it's not just about the work. I think we have to, you know, you've got, like you mentioned, you've got managers within a business who are trying to drive the business forward and create growth. Now they're having to have well-being conversations with their teams on top of that. It's an impossible task. There needs to be data-driven decisions, like Dan mentioned, and you also need new roles within people and culture that can support people.
I mean, sorry to jump in. That is,
yeah.
And I heard this yesterday, and it was brilliant. It was by a lady at the Digital City Festival, and they were talking about digital transformation. And she made a really great point about the NHS, which is each time they bring in a new piece of technology, they know they have to bring in 3 times the resources in people to make sure that piece of technology works. Yeah, so it cannot be, let's bring in a piece of technology and not hire anyone. It's, you know, it's the other way around. You have to hire people, and you have to hire people that care, and then they use technology to be even better. And I think this is the bit we're doing now, yeah? We've got to remember that the money that businesses are saving, potentially saving by people working from home, which they do make savings on, that should be reinvested in people to care about those people.
Yeah.
That's the thing, you know, we've got to reinvest in people and in culture, but with people, not just technology. Ironic considering I run a technology company, but it's about the people, isn't it?
Can I just respond, Christian,
Yeah,
just to 2 points to what you were saying, you know, having run small businesses and stuff. And first off, it's like, you are not 100% responsible for the well-being of every member of your team. Every individual within your team is responsible for their own well-being. You're just there to facilitate and support. And also to the point that a business should be a self-supporting community. So you can set the tone and you can be supportive, but everybody's responsible for that in a way, and how that runs on a day-to-day basis. I look out for you, you look out for me. Is everybody doing okay? The key is to create that culture where that openness, that psychological safety to be able to say, look, I'm struggling today, or I can see so-and-so struggling, can I help you? That's the key to it.
In very practical terms, we're going to get some specifics coming up over the next few months. One question from Mike about vaccinations, you know, whole sort of debate about vaccine. Now, maybe Andrew, this is something that you guys have had a think about. Is it fair to ask people who haven't been vaccinated to come and spend their time in an office of a mix of vaccinated and non-vaccinated people? Is that fair for us to ask people to do that?
Well, I mean, for a start, the guidance from the government at the moment is still for work from home. So at the moment, until the end of June, it is still a working from home thing. So what we can do is create the right safety measures in place that people feel comfortable to come in. There shouldn't be any reason why you would feel any different going to the shops or now going out to grab a coffee or the gym or whatever and feel any less safe in a workplace, as long as the workplace is designed effectively and has everything that I talked about before: one-way systems, hand sanitize, increased cleaning, and so on. So I don't think it's unreasonable for businesses to encourage their teams to do that, subject to having you know the right facilities to do it.
And still there will be a level of fear, as you say, and that balance that was mentioned earlier about, I think from Leanne, the kind of, you want to make it obvious that we've done a lot of things here to keep you safe, but by doing that, we can exacerbate the fears in some. So question from Sally, who I think it's Sally from, sorry, I've lost the question on the chat now, but I'm presuming it's Sally from Leeds Uni, who has asked, how do we manage that fear of going back into the office when we get to that point? She's got a supplementary question, which I'll try and address, which is, has turnover of staffing increased? But let's stick with that management of fear, because it's building on the point that we're just talking about there, Andrew.
So I think it comes back to the engagement point. I think it's coming back to the regular check-ins, the communication, and I think it's got to be colleague driven, as Leanne says as well. You know, there's an employees has the responsibility themselves to drive some of these things. So with creating an environment that you've got increased touch points with your line manager, you know, increased check-ins, whether that be digitally or physically, if it can be done safely. I think the onus is definitely on the employee to communicate, say where they don't feel safe, say what their concerns are, say what's jarring with, you know, working patterns that might have changed around caring responsibilities or whatever it is. But it comes back to two-way proper communication. And I think the other thing is as well, let's try and be a little bit innovative. Let's try new things. Let's almost beta test them. You know, if they don't work, we'll go back to the drawing board. What we've started to do internally is use a sprint methodology, which is used heavily, obviously, in digital transformation projects, but also some smaller, more granular projects around, you know, working patterns and office environments and new products that we want to bring. I guess it's trialing it. If it doesn't work, put it on the cutting room floor, move on to the next thing. If it does work, it can quite quickly move into business as usual. So I think innovation's a really big part of it.
I love that. Yeah, Dan.
I was going to, you know, and I've got to be careful with words. There's a couple of businesses I'm talking to and about people massively changing and maybe not going back to that job and wanting to find new ones and all this kind of churn rate, which I think is going to increase, by the way, as people find themselves and slow down and take that time to think, actually, do I really like this job? Do I really need to do it? If I can work for anyone, would I work for this person? And I think that's really important. We give them that flexibility. You don't actually want people to work for you that don't want to work for you, that are just picking up a paycheck, because they're tremendously unproductive. That's a different point. And my point really was around, if people can go to the pub and they can go to the shops and they're happy to do that, because I'm not, because I have to shield and stuff, so I don't. But if they do, isn't it interesting that we're then saying we've got to somehow get them back to work? But they're already doing, you know, it's the same danger level, isn't it? But so I think what we've got to do as leaders is we've got to chat with them. I think it's actually the managers to chat to those people, not the employees to have to chat to them, just like the employee doesn't need to chat to a pub. You know, we've got to resell them the concept of coming back, and we've got to add value.
I agree. I think that I definitely agree. And some of the earlier discussion, there's got to be a valid reason that everybody gets. You know, if you're asking someone to work from the office, or you're recommending it, suggesting it, you know, even at a trial, there's got to be a purpose behind that makes sense. And our sensitivities towards coming back to the office, I think, are twofold and in two massive sort of summarized groups. One is the sort of the physical fear or the physical understanding of safety. And the second is, does it make sense? I think we've all allowed ourselves to ask the question, what actually works best for me and the business I'm working in? And I think going back to Sally's question of turnover of staff, I think from my understanding is in our industry, there are a lot of very, very good people who are sitting tight at the moment, and they're watching and they're working out, is the business that I'm in the right business for me? Now I've learned what I've learned over the last 12 months about myself and what's important. So I think in answer to your question, Sally, my understanding is turnover, other than forced turnover, hasn't increased, but the expectation is it's going to.
Can I just, do you mind if I throw something in on the first part of Sally's question about fear? We need to understand what fear is. Fear, we create fear ourselves in our mind, usually because we're telling ourselves a story that isn't necessarily true. And at every turn at the moment, there's fear-based stories being pushed at us by the media. And I understand why they're doing it, but it just ramps it up. So if we can help people understand where their fear is coming from and unpick that negative story, that might help somewhat as well.
Superb. Listen, right, we're on. So I'm looking at the clock. We're last minute. Very, very quick summary. If we can, we'll try and wrap this up in kind of 2 minutes. But around the panelists, please, starting with Seb, just some of the things, maybe the key things that are resonating with you from today's discussion.
I just think we all need to keep listening rather than talking.
Yeah.
That would be my summary, really. It's just really take on board the views of others and listen to what your team and your colleagues and yourself, listen to what you need. Try and, look inwards and reflect on what you need. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, ironically, as someone who very rarely listens and is continually talking, also as a job, and my apologies if I spoke too much today, but one of the things that your flock does is actually, that's the whole point of it. It allows you to listen and get that feedback. And I'm saying not flock, not just your flock, but use technology. The technologies are out there right now where you can use things like that will get you surveys and engagements and all these other things. Don't just rely on the telephone. Do use telephone too, but use the technologies that are out there to make the world and make your business a better place, and also make your culture a better place. Because if you do that, people will naturally come back. Like, for example, even though I don't work for the social chain, I most probably would, now listening to how lovely they are and how nice they are, I wouldn't mind going back into their office. But there you go. There's a thing that's a bit of a turnaround.
Lovely. Leanne, what's from your point of view, sort of key themes from today?
I think the key theme for me is as I started out, we are all unique individuals, and I would just give advice to every individual. Your thoughts and feelings are unique to you. Tune into them, understand them, and process them a little bit, and realize not everything in your head is actually true. And then you'll slowly start to prepare yourself for coming back to a much, much busier world.
Superb. And Andrew, if I could come to you finally, and then we'll do the big thank yous.
It's always difficult to wrap up, isn't it? Because I'm just going to echo everything that everyone else has said, listen and communication. And I think, we've used the phrase several times today that it is just one size doesn't fit all, and it is going to be very nuanced from business to business and from employee to employee. But I come back to something I said right at the beginning, that I honestly think we've got a really exciting point where we can move past decades of orthodoxy and 9 to 5 and really have an opportunity to supercharge our businesses. So yeah, I'm sitting here really excited about it.
It's great. Well, listen, thank you so much, panelists. From everybody else's, on behalf of everybody else, thank you so much for the time you've given up in preparing and then coming and joining us on the session today. Interestingly, it's not just the back to the office debate, of course. It's a whole, the industry is starting to open up, events are starting to kick in. If people are interested in the kind of whole question of how to win business, there's an MPA in conjunction with Future Factory event tomorrow morning. There's details on the MPA website for that. If you are feeling like it's time to get out and about in the city, fantastic. I know Bruntwood's Hatch venue is doing some great live music. There's great food, and it does feel very safe and incredibly well organised. So that's on Oxford Road. I'm sure you can find details online about that. The MPA Academy training program is kicking off soon. Again, there's some reference to that on the MPA website. And if you are into golf, if you've had a passion for it, apparently that's a growth sport again. There's the MPA Golf Day, I think is the 24th of June. Again, details on the website. A double thank you to Andrew and the guys from Bruntwood for making this thing happen, bringing some valuable sponsorship for the production of the event. But Andrew, in particular, for your time involved today. Seb, thank you so much, and thanks to Social Chain for allowing you to be with us today. Dan, give my love to Michael, will you, and everyone at your flock. And Leanne, brilliant to see you again today. I really, always a lovely, open, fresh, honest perspective from you. To Caroline and the team at Clear, thank you. Thank you so much for the production, and to Cindy and Jenny for bringing everybody together. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to the guests. Great questions, some brilliant comments. I'll keep all of those and I'll read them in my dotage. But it's lovely to see you all. Have a great day, everybody, and good luck out there.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Got to do the me. Bye.